Back home now, and as you probably know, there is a contentious plan to build 2 new war memorials at the lake end of Anzac Parade. Although we can now report they seem rather less likely to go ahead. They hit a snag today with the National Trust declaring Lake Burley Griffin as one of 9 most at-risk heritage sites. The story has echoes of the immigration bridge, an idea that was abandoned in March last year when the bridge was downgraded to a monument. The story's similarities have included a degree of confusion about both the approval and funding processes. Now the memorial designs, the NCA approval processes and the public objections are being scrutinised by a joint parliamentary committee. Adam Shirley reports on the latest skirmishes around the war memorials.
We're starting to wonder whether the Lake Memorials Initiative has perhaps run out of puff a little bit.
It's been 8 years since a group of retired military officers first came up with an idea of building 2 new memorials to commemorate World Wars I and II. A vigorous skirmish has developed over where the memorials are to be built, what they will look like, and the process used to approve them. Now there are suggestions they may not even go ahead, but the proponents are still keen on the idea.
The reality is that there are 11 memorials currently on Anzac Parade, with another 3 are planned, being Boer War, Peacekeepers and the Battle for Australia. And yet we will have ignored World War I and World War II as conflicts that deserve to have memorials in their own right.
If you walk around the existing AWM, you find 8 museum galleries referring to World Wars I and II. You find 98,000 names of World War I and II soldiers. I think people who know anything of the history of the AWM would be aghast at the suggestion that it doesn't commemorate those 2 wars.
World War I and World War II.
Through a series of meetings, a parliamentary committee and the National Capital Authority signed off on the new structures, with a design competition for the project run and won in 2008. But critics say that during these steps, Canberrans didn't have a reasonable chance to provide their input.
We support the preeminence of the Australian War Memorial as memorialising our war dead, and therefore we don't want competing memorials. We also support the concept that Burley Griffin had, particularly with long axes. Therefore we don't want large memorials intruding on that axis. And we also, I guess, support good public administration.
We have memorials on Anzac Parade to the Vietnam War, to the Korean War, but none to the 2 greatest engagements in which Australians have been involved, the First and Second World Wars. So the logic of having memorials to those conflicts made some sense when I first heard about it.
A federal government inquiry is reviewing the approval procedure for national memorials. Liberal Senator Gary Humphries is on the inquiry committee.
I think the process that we've used for the last 60 or 70 years in this city needs an upgrade, needs a dust-off, and I think that's what this process of the committee is now undertaking. Canberrans themselves have a great sense of the status and the design and the style of the city, and they want to be part of the dialogue about how it changes. And those stakeholders are pretty important. They live here. They deserve a bigger say. They don't get that with the current model where essentially the Prime Minister and a few other key politicians make a decision and then it happens.
Mike Buick says his group does value the input of locals and has sought opinion about the proposal, using the NCA's resources, speaking to the Walter Burley Griffin Society and holding a public meeting in October last year. In response to some of this feedback, the committee is now saying they are planning to modify some elements of the project.
The design competition allowed for a design up to 20 metres, which is very high, and that was in fact what the architect used, the full 20 metres, so we have to look at how that may be able to be reduced.
Any idea about the specifics of things like height or the area it covers at this stage?
I'd rather not say it's going to be a particular height until we have got the sign-off of those people who are the particular stakeholders in that issue.
Also of concern to the project's detractors is the issue of funding and where the money might be coming from.
First of all, the committee offers secrecy to its donors. It allows for anonymous donations. That's a problem to start. Secondly, there's an issue about where the funding might come from. The Memorials Committee, Development Committee is on record as saying that it will target the defence industry for funding. Now, the difficulty with that is that there's a sort of moral issue in our view about the appropriateness of defence manufacturers or arms manufacturers funding a war memorial. It's a little bit like the tobacco industry funding cancer wards or the breweries funding road trauma units.
That view is absolutely offensive. Australians today are operating in peacekeeping roles in our region and beyond. They're carrying the weapons designed and used and built by these companies. They are absolutely doing a good job, and we should be supporting them, not suggesting that they're doing something wrong by using those weapons. You have to have the same weapons whether you're in a peacekeeping role or in a warlike role. And in those circumstances, why shouldn't we support the companies that give those Australian peacekeepers the capacity to do their job?
And I can tell you categorically, we've not been approaching the arms industry, if that's the question, anyone like that to raise money. However, people who feel empathy for this project, why would we reject their money if somebody comes to us with money?
Somebody had better come soon. The project needs at least $21 million to proceed.
How much money have you raised so far?
Well, we've a long way short of $1 million.
A check of the latest annual report shows that even adding the federal government's contribution of $250,000, the Memorials Development Committee still has less than $500,000 for the project.
To be frank with you, I think the proposal for these memorials is in some trouble, and I think that particularly with the adverse publicity it's had in recent months, it's much less likely now to raise the necessary funding to be able to go ahead. I think that's a great pity, but I acknowledge that it's probably not going to happen now, in part because the process to consider it has had flaws.
I think there's less than one chance in 5 that they'll ever be built.
Are you confident the project will be completed?
Well, time will tell.
And that parliamentary committee report is due before Christmas.